Well, for more on what Africa might expect from the Biden-Harris presidency, I'm joined now from Washington by the lawyer and co-chair of African Women for Biden-Harris, Angelle Kwemo, who is also a member of the steering committee of the African Diaspora for Biden group and is additionally a former staffer at the US Congress. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me start by getting you to wear your hat as a lawyer first in America. To what extent does William Barr's move today contradict long-standing Department of Justice policy?
Thank you very much, Charles, for having me and for your good work. So first of all, the Attorney General, I think, is just buying time because there's two schools of thought in the same administration that led to one of the lead justice to resign. Normally, according to the Constitution, the state has the obligation to conduct and certify the election, not the Attorney General. He can conduct a primary review, but after the result, not before. So, but in his philosophy, in his school of thought, he thinks he has to step in prior to the results to make sure this election is free and fair. But I don't think that will take him anywhere, because at the end of the day, let's see where the results are going. Is those irregularities are proven? They need to bring evidence. And number two, are they consequential? And I don't think they are.
Well, that's obviously an expected point of view from a lawyer and a Democrat. But from your personal perspective, I mean, as a Democrat and somebody who supported the Biden campaign, what message does that move by William Barr send to you? What does it tell you is going on at the White House and what the Trump administration is trying to do to this clear election victory by Joe Biden?
It is very, very concerning. This is Africa Playbook, African 101. And if you combine the fact that, one, he wants to investigate, second, Trump just fired the defense secretary because he was not loyal to him. And it's very concerning. I can see a scenario where he can easily use military force or the police against the people if the Democrats decide to protest or if there's some movement on the ground. It's very, very concerning for American democracy. I think you need to remember that. And as an African, it's very disappointing. But the reality is also we need to be very prudent, because even if we win by December 14, because that's the actual date that we need to consider, we have 17 million people who voted for Trump. So, and then there's already signal that he will run for 2024, and it's going to be a very, very difficult term for Biden. Given the fact that I think they will be continuing to mobilize, and I can easily see Trump, cynical at his ease, even punish the Republican that is not supporting him. Just imagine a scenario where he decides to ask all his supporters in Georgia not to show up to the polls. That means that Georgia will go to Democrats. That means the Senate will be controlled by Democrats. That would be the best way for him to punish the Republican establishment if they don't support his attempt to stay in power, no matter what. But at the end of the day, you know the process. They will do the recount. The electoral vote at the county level will be decided by November 17, I think. By November 23, they will have to, at the state level, they have to certify. And then December 14, that will be it. If there's disagreement, it goes to the House. The Nancy Pelosi, her people will have to determine who is the next president. I don't think Trump wants that. But it's going to be a very, very difficult 4 years.
Well, absolutely. And you've made the points quite well there, because of course, if there is, I mean, if the Senate leans in the direction of the Republicans, then Joe Biden is going to have pretty much a lame duck presidency. But just back to the present, the Biden campaign saying that legal action is possible in order to free up the millions of dollars that are needed to put the transition into effect, the general administration services and all of that. They say legal action is possible, but is it looking probable by the day?
Yes, it is. We have anticipated that, even before the election, the Biden campaign hired a lot of lawyers, an army of lawyers, to counter all the potential legal challenges that we will face. And I think they get ready to fight.
Right. Okay. Let's just get a bit of background from you, because of course you were part of the group that campaigned for Joe Biden. You marshaled quite a lot of votes from the African and the black community for Mr. Biden. And you're a lawyer, as I said, and you've been trying for many years to build a bridge between Africa and the US and to promote inter-African trade. Tell us a bit about that.
Oh, yes, I've been mobilizing the African diaspora since Obama, and then even for Clinton, I was chairing the African diaspora for Clinton, and this time I joined the leading team, and I mobilized African women for Biden. The reality is, right now you have 1.2 million registered African descent in the US, and only 48% were registered. Now we try to use all our network to make sure we have at least 70% registered to vote and voting for Biden. But the also reality, as you know, African political DNA is very conservative. We saw a big chunk of Nigerian supporting Trump, a lot of Congolese supporting Trump, but we managed to get the maximum of African behind Biden. And that's where we can see in the history, Africa has never been in the platform during the campaign. But we drafted an African agenda, African diaspora agenda for Biden, who was approved and released, I think, three weeks before the election, including our position on immigration, small businesses, and of course, foreign affairs, international trade, and highlighting the fact that we want to see the administration support more trade with Africa and support regional integration as well. So let's see what happens after December 14th.
And of course, coming off the back of the Trump presidency, you've been in America, you worked with the Obama administration, and now you're working after Mr. Trump with the Biden presidency. Do you agree with those who say that the Trump presidency has done a lot of damage to Africa?
Yes, even though we all know that, in French we say bonnet blanc, blanc bonnet. Africa policy has always been non-partisan. They agree on everything. But the big difference in this administration was the fact that his policy, and you remember when he was released only 2 years ago with his national security advisor Bolton, was technically just a counter-Russia policy or a counter-China policy. He tried to use Africa as a balanced alternative market to China. But we saw some very good development. China is always be very important in the U.S. policy here, and that's probably why they double by reforming OPIC and creating the African Development Finance Agency, doubling the financial capability to make sure we transact more. But on the development front, on the democracy front, he was not very concerned about democracy, and that's what we see with the Democrats. They promote more institutional building democracy and the rest, even though America itself has its own democratic challenges. But I can see a type of continuity with what we had with Obama, with the Women Program, the Young Leaders Program, and then with the trade investment and the summit. Big change is the role of the diaspora. There was some glimpse of that during the Obama administration and in his first strategy. But this time, from the get-go, you see the African diaspora engaged in policy formulation. That's what we're doing. In policy formulation, in policy implementation. You already have Congresswoman Karen Bass, who already set the tone with various hearings on democracy. She also introduced legislation to modernize and make the U.S. Development Agency, USAID, reflecting the culture of America, meaning that promoting more cultural diplomacy. That means you see more African diaspora engaged in the State Department as well. Now, on the CFTA, on the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, we see a big difference as well. For the Trump administration, they start negotiating a free trade agreement with Kenya. And then it was not in line with what African Union wants. They want to engage as a bloc. So nobody wants here, Democrat or Republican, who wants to see the African growth opportunity expire in 2025. The question is, are they going to turn into a bilateral agreement? I don't think so, because I don't think Africa is really ready unless they use it as a tool to promote some reform. And then, do I see the Biden administration continue to negotiate a free trade agreement with Kenya, even though we all know that it's not what Africa wants? We in the diaspora, we promote slowing down that negotiation and move as a bloc so that it doesn't create any disparity among African countries, and also respond to the aspiration of the African people. So, and then of course, more funding to the Commerce Department, to State Department, and to the Prosper Africa, which is a good program that Trump did, which is a transactional deal-making office to make sure we promote two-way trade amongst small business and on both sides of the Atlantic. But this thing will not happen if you don't remove the travel ban. You cannot trade with people that are not welcome in your country. In the first 100 days, the first order of business for Biden will be to repeal the travel ban and the Muslim ban. That will make a big difference in our trade agenda and our trade discussion with African countries.
Well, that's very interesting. I was going to ask you another question, but we've got about 40 seconds to the end of this segment. But please stay with us, because we want to talk with you some more. The things that you're saying are very interesting indeed. And when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about the challenge being the fact that Joe Biden, in spite of all the things you've said and all the policy recommendations you've made, remains an unknown quantity. And he's also a politician. And when you've got 70 million people in America who voted for, in fact, more than 70 million who voted for Donald Trump, he's going to have to play to that gallery as well. But stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about what Africa might expect from a Biden-Harris presidency. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyegulu. According to Foreign Policy magazine, this moment in U.S. political history, with Joe Biden as president-elect and Kamala Harris as vice president-elect, could mark a reset in U.S.-Africa relations. Within minutes of major U.S. networks calling the race for Biden and Harris, the world began celebrating. In Tanzania, Zitto Kabwe, a leading opposition figure who lost a parliamentary seat in the country's recent flawed election, tweeted that the Biden-Harris victory represented hope for democracy at a time when its values are under siege. Many citizens across the African continent echoed that sentiment, and for the moment it seems America, the symbol, might re-emerge. However, as Foreign Policy magazine points out, for the symbol to truly regain power and legitimacy, and for the Biden-Harris administration to regain credibility in sub-Saharan Africa, it must first deliver at home, implementing expansive police reform and an agenda to improve the lives of Black Americans will be essential. That, it says, is the starting point. Well, with me from Washington, the lawyer and co-chair of African Women for Biden-Harris, Angelle Kwemo, who's also a member of the steering committee of the African Diaspora for Biden group and is additionally a former staffer at the U.S. Congress. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. We're going to come to that issue raised by the Foreign Policy magazine in a moment. Of course, Kamala Harris is a former Attorney General herself, so the hope must be that there will be some far-reaching legal reforms in America. But before we went on break, we were talking about what to expect from Joe Biden when he becomes president, and I was saying that the challenge is that he's an unknown quantity, and we don't know what will actually happen when he takes over the White House. I mean, what is the very least expectation that you have?
Good questions. As he said during this campaign, rebuild the soul of the nation and unify the American people. I think that's his biggest number one assignment. But if you look at the polls, American people are more concerned right now about getting out of the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, for the American recovery to take place. I think these first 100 days will be focused on COVID-19 and the American recovery. So if you even has already announced the task force, and you can imagine that even Vice President Harris is very, very knowledgeable on the issue because her mother is was a scientist, and she's very committed to address these issues. You can even see right now people already discussing about the laboratory, the pharmaceutical industry is already expediting the research and announcing, giving good news, which is unfortunately perceived as being politicized because it's very surprising that the week after the election that they're announcing the progress made on the vaccine. But President Biden's assignment will be to address the crisis, get American economy back in order, release the stimulus, create more jobs, and obviously join by all those multilateral platforms, World Health Organization, and the rest.
Right, okay. I suppose what I was talking about was in the context of Africa, because of course it is unlikely, isn't it, that the Biden administration, in spite of all the policy suggestions that you've made with your team and all the rest of it, it's unlikely that the Biden administration will meet all the hopes and aspirations that Africans have. So my question is, what will make you happy at the very least, and make your campaign on his behalf worth it?
At the end of the day, Africans' future depends on Africa. African leaders need to do their own homework. This is what I've always said. But if the Biden administration decide to respond to the Africa's aspiration based on their policy on what Africa needs, including the African Diaspora recommendation or request, I think that will make a big difference, because at the end of the day, all we all want is more trade, more respect, more dignity, and what we want is job creation. Any policy that creates jobs in the continent and also obviously creates jobs in the US would be very welcome, because we cannot talk about economic, political freedom, democracy if people are suffering, people are dying. You cannot vote if you're not economically free. If people go to election and buy the election with a bag of rice because it's effective, because people are poor. So I personally would like to see US promoting more investment and trade, not just because they want to counter China. Just like at the end of the day, if you don't have the woman you love, you marry the woman you want, you have. So they will never be able to counter China just because their approach to the Africa economy or Africa policy is not always with the understanding of African culture. They need to adjust a little bit more, and so that the business will be more effective in conducting transactions. So that makes a difference between Russia, all the developing countries. That's why African countries are promoting more South-South relations, because they come with a common understanding. So America needs to adjust in that and make the diplomacy more pragmatic. President Biden said during the last debate that diplomacy is personal. So I hope that he will use his personal connection. He will use the cultural connection that the African diaspora brings to really be more effective and understand the African context. Let me give you one example. The Francophone country, America is always behind in penetrating the Francophone market, not just because it's a French précaré, they leave it to the French, but also because they don't understand. They need to use I'm a big advocate of African diaspora. Excuse me, I will keep repeating that, but that's what I'm preaching about. if they use more people like myself or others who understand the context, they will be able to do more business, more transaction, or invest more in Francophone country. Francophone country, the West Africa, is close to 393 million people. It's large.
Right. Okay. Let me just come in there, Angelle. Sorry to interrupt you, but we've got about 2.5 minutes or so left. And I just want to get your take on this before we have to go. And that's the issue, well, the accession of Kamala Harris to the position of the vice president-elect and what it means to you, because one African-American observer described the vision of her on that stage with Joe Biden as a knockdown soul moment where black women in America suddenly felt that they were being seen and the ground had become somewhat equalized. I mean, do you share those kinds of sentiments?
Yes, I share it, but I'm very happy for my African American sisters. As an Africans, they were behind. So Africa was already prepared to see African women rise to the leadership position. We have many prime ministers and many presidents, or 2 or 3 presidents already. So I'm happy that it's happening here. And that also shows that, the concept of democracy, of voting right, and the position of the minority groups is the same everywhere in the world. And I'm glad that America has finally come to the realization that women can really lead them, and that they can give them the power that they already have, because they are the backbone of the American society. And I'm glad that they're finally rising to that level. And she's the first. And as you said, she will not be the last.
Right. And very briefly, because we're almost out of time, Miss Harris, of course, as chief prosecutor in California, has said she wanted to get inside the system so she could change it for the marginalized. That was her drive. What do you want her to do now in her new role as U.S. Vice President that would improve the lives of African Americans? We've got less than a minute.
Yeah, she needs to take on reforming the police system, the justice system, and the police very seriously, including having a better understanding of the community, reconciling the police force with the community, because as you know, the FBI has always been perceived as being the arm of the oppressor, of the white people. And the same thing in Africa. The police now, like you see in Nigeria, police has always more accountable toward the leaders than toward the people. So they need to create an environment where they can communicate, build a trust among the community and the police, so that they can really be able to do their job, protect the people, and respect the institution.
I want to thank you very much. It's been an absolutely brilliant and hugely enlightening interview. Angelle Kwemo is a lawyer and co-chair of African Women for Biden and Harris, also a member of the steering committee of the African Diaspora for Biden Group, and a former staffer at the U.S. Congress. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and the United States. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.